Mental problems, man.
Yeah, I'm torn on this because I'm not a doctor and I'm quite an idiot. So when you combine those things, it makes for me having a dangerous discussion with this. But mental health has been a big part of sports and just the world discussion for a while now. As you see on the picture there, you got Coco, who's going to be in the Olympics, Simone, Ben Simmons famously did it, Osaka in tennis. There's been others as well. And it's kind of this, I'm old, so I'm on the old school versus the new school here. I'm more on like you can cry in the storm or dance in the rain. I was taught to tough things out, to push through, and maybe to my own, hurt or detriment. I'm not sure. And so it's going to be an interesting dynamic, and it's going to continue to be a big discussion, especially with Simone, because, again, famously at the Tokyo Olympics, in the Olympics, she just decided, I got the twisties, which is where you can't control your body in the air. I'm having mental health issues, and she just stopped. She just said, I'm not going to compete anymore, and we ended up only getting silver that year. It was great for that girl Lee because she ended up being able to shine, but I mean, still, it was a heavy topic of discussion. Again, Coco and Osaka, when they took breaks, was a big part of the discussion. Ben Simmons' mental health has been questioned going back to since he's been drafted, and it's kind of... I get it. They want to, the new school says we got to break the stigma. And let me just break down to two separate things of thoughts here. The new school says we got to break this. Too many people, especially athletes, are taught to not seek help. 5% to 35% have mental health problems. There are studies in college for college athletes that say it's up to 50%. 50% of all college athletes suffer overwhelming anxiety, OTS syndrome, eating disorders, PTSD, sleep disorders. Again, Simone and the gymnast, that's a term they have called the twisties, where they get so stressed about all that pressure that they're suddenly put under that they can't handle it, and suddenly they can't control themselves in the air. I've seen it in baseball. There was a guy named Chuck Knobloch, got the yips. Other ones have gotten the yips where the pressure just gets to them, and suddenly they can't even field a baseball anymore. It's a real thing, and I get it. Unfortunately, though, I'm old. I'm an old-ass man. I come from the old school of, the idea that you deal and push through adversity, that it's not just necessary to not quit when the going gets tough, but that's actually what makes you grow, and that's what makes you tough. 70% of people that experience an adversity and are able to push through it have positive psychological growth, according to major studies out there. And they say the most powerful way to combat this anxiety and all this pressure that all these people are feeling nowadays is to build resilience and to get quote unquote mental strength. That's how actually you do it. That you don't just call it quits and say it's getting too hard and I don't want to do this, I'm going to go sit down. They say there's studies, at least on the other side of this, to at least somewhat argue a medical, retort there, is that a lot of people say the best thing to do for anxiety is to learn how to handle that anxiety through going through those rough patches, even though it seems maybe overwhelming or something you can't do. And I think of the sports that I grew up with. Kobe in his rookie year with the 3 air balls in the playoffs, he didn't quit next year. He decided to go in the gym that night after that embarrassment versus the Jazz. Magic Johnson, when he failed in the finals in the 80s and was made fun of everywhere, again called tragic instead of magic, he came back better than ever. Guys like Joe Dumars, Brett Favre, Michael Jordan, at different parts of the season, but finding out that their fathers died. Joe Dumars found out after the game in one of the finals and continued to go and played very well. So dealing with the death of parents, and Hank Aaron, go Google what poor Hank Aaron had to do trying to break Babe Ruth's home run record when you're a black man in the 60s and 70s. Did not go very well. And you want to talk about some pressure. Jesus Christ. Carrie Strug to keep it and put it back to Simone Biles in the Olympics there. A lot of people look back at that now and say that was terrible the way that they did that. But when she had the sprained ankle and she could barely walk and she was able to hit that last thing on the vault, and then, suddenly it was this indelible moment in time. So I go from that group, man, and I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I'm right, because I was talking about this with some people, and they made a good point, because I was like, look at all the GOATs and the people that have put themselves through this and struggled and been able to persevere. And then I thought about it, and they're like, yeah, look at those GOATs and how they're doing now. You show me an all-time GOAT, I'll show you someone who's got a little bit of issues.
Sounds like you have mental problems, man.
I hate to say it, but like Michael Jordan is most likely an alcoholic. Mantle, Ruth, and Cobb all fall into that same category. Tom Brady, another GOAT, chose football over his family. He'd rather be 9-7 with the Buccaneers, lost his family, at least in a big way, a divorce and everything everything else, and now all sorts of struggles there because of his decision, because he thought football was the most important thing in the world. Tiger, do I even need to talk about Tiger losing golf, his sex addiction, losing his wife? Magic Johnson, do I even really need to go there? That dude had sex with everybody in Los Angeles apparently. Magic got it on. Ali is arguably okay, but he was also somebody who, I mean, most likely, a lot of people want to say that it was, a disease. He might have just taken too many shots to the dome because he boxed way too long. Famously, at the end of his career, there's a documentary about it, and he seemed punch drunk. So again, I'm trying to say, well, look at these GOATs that fought and did all this and went through the struggle, and then you look back and go, well, oh shit, almost every one of them is arguably crazy. Like almost every one of them, so what's the cost, I guess, is my point. I think I've gotten too far into this discussion. I want to save this again for another day because I want to get back to Simone. But it is an interesting discussion. New school versus old school, saying we got to deal with this, got to stop being a stigma. And the old school like me being like, oh, you just got to tough it out. And then you look at the ones that have actually toughed it out, and almost all of them are crazy.
Sounds like you have mental problems, man.
It's an interesting discussion.